All right, we are back in the garage today, and we have another new part to install on a 2020 Rebel. Likely to be the last part for a long time because there really is nothing else other than some of the bumpers on the market that are piquing my interest, but we're going to go ahead and talk to this guy today. Should be a pretty quick video. But anyway, this is the AVS Aerocab marker light system. So they have the Aerocab system, and then they have another one that goes right here. It's a hood deflector with the LED built into it. So the Aerocab system is basically this plastic piece that adheres to the top edge of your roof, and it gives you a location to mount this flat LED that comes with it. And on the flat LED, you got marker lights. So you got 3 there, 3, 3, 3, and 3. So it gives you kind of a cool utility look to the front of your trucks. But I have a couple concerns about this one. First concern is the weather stripping. So because we're going to be running a wire down the A-pillar of the truck, so the LED will mount across the top, there's going to be a wire that needs to come down into the engine bay. So we need to basically install a little channel right here because we don't have good weather stripping from the factory. We're going to be using this piece. Biggest concern about this is there's a ton of kinks in it. And I've tried to hit it with some heat. I'm going to hit it with a little bit more heat just to see if I can flatten this out. But this might look kind of ugly once it's installed on the truck. But we'll make do with what it is. We could always reach out to AVS and see if they have better solutions for that one. The second, and probably the most, I guess the biggest concern is wind noise. So you can see this guy sticks up about 1.5 to 2 inches above the cab line, and it is a flat surface. I've driven in cars that had that roof light bar, and they're noisy. So I have some concerns that this might be just slightly noisy as well. It's a little bit lower, a little bit more streamlined, so maybe they took some of the science, or they did a little bit of their homework on this to design this guy good. You put something up on the leading edge of the roof with basically a flat surface, you're gonna get something. So we'll see how bad it is. If anything, I'll just pull the system off. This is a little bit of an experiment anyway. So we get the plastic piece. This is basically the heart of the system. You get the LED that mounts on there. It comes pre-wired, so we're gonna drop that wire down in the engine bay. You get 2 posi taps, so one's for your power, one's for your ground. Alcohol wipes. The alcohol wipes are first to clean the surfaces of this guy, so you could stick the LED on there. And then the other alcohol wipes are so you can clean the surface of the truck and adhere this bad boy on there. So you also get some of these clips. No way in hell I'd be using these in my engine bay. It's overkill for the size wire that you get. So I'll find other solutions. Zip ties might be the best way to go. But I like that they include posi taps. Good to see companies finally using quality ones instead of those blue like side taps that you crimp. But anyway, let's get to the installation. So the first thing I'm going to do here is clean off this front surface with one of the alcohol wipes and then get the LED itself stuck onto here. So all we got to do is find the center of the light bar, find the center of here, and then just basically stick everything on there. And it really only goes in one spot on the plastic piece itself. And then we want to make sure that we're feeding the wire through the corner here. So there is a pre-drilled hole right there in the corner. So let's go ahead and get the light installed on here. And then we can focus on cleaning the roof line, getting this guy stuck on there, and then running the wire. All right, so I have the light adhered onto the mount itself. I went ahead while I was messing around with it, put a piece of tape here and put a line basically right at that center LED so I know where the dead center is on the whole bracket itself. Then the other thing, just to make note of, underneath they have a gap in the tape. That's where the wire is going to poke through. I don't know if it's going to go right here. So I didn't tape it just yet, but what they suggest you do is leave a little bit inside the opening, so maybe a little loop like that, and then putting some tape just to hold everything in place while you're mounting it. It's really just there to keep it out of the way and make sure that it clears the double stick tape. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to measure my window and figure out where the center's at on there. That way I can line up my little line with this guy. So this little line that I made with the center on here, and then that should be enough to kind of get me in the general location. And then basically what they say, when you install the bracket itself, you want to be 1/16 off the roof edge at least. It's nice because the plastic piece itself is kind of molded, so it fits right on top of here, so you really don't have much room side to side to mess up. But since I am one person, it's going to be a little difficult, so I'm going to try to figure out where the middle is at least helps me line up that center line. And then what we'll do is we'll stick on the double stick tape in the middle and then pull it off to the outside so that we can get everything. And I'll do each side one at a time. Once I find that center, we're going to go ahead and clean this whole area. So there's an alcohol wipe and then there's a surface prep. So let's just kind of clean everything up, get it ready to go so that adhesive sticks right on it. Like I said, I might hit some of the stuff with some heat just before we stick it, just so it's nice and tacky and fixes down. It's like 45 degrees in the garage, not horrible, but anything you could do to help the double stick tape stick will be perfect. Okay, so I went ahead and lined up my mark here with the center on my windshield as best I can. So you can see a little piece of blue tape. That blue tape is about 28 inches from the metal on the pillar here to the metal, or to the middle, and then 28 inches this way. So about 56 inches across there. So now what I'm gonna do is modify this just a tad. So I don't like where they have this opening because that's basically where you're supposed to put the wire. I wish it was a little bit more over here. So I'm gonna use a razor blade to cut out some of the tape over here. That way the tape can exit as close to the side as possible, because ultimately what we're gonna do is try to get it to route out right by this corner, because there's a little bit of weather stripping here, and if you can get that wire popped in here, you could ride around the window just a smidge, hide it right up in this little channel here, and then we'll put our little gasket right down here, and then the wire will pop through here and then get into the engine bay. So that little rubber gasket that they give you, I'm gonna adhere it this way, so it's gonna stick to the white paint alongside of the windshield, not on the windshield itself. I think that'll allow me to get the wire as close as possible to this edge, and then it'll line it up perfectly with this opening to drop it through here. You can feed the wire right through there, and it ends up basically right underneath my little A-pillar pods here, so it's perfect. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is just clean the hell out of the top of the cab here. So let me go wipe everything down. I already got a car wash earlier today, but I drove around a bit. So let me get some isopropyl and just clean everything off, get everything ready to go to install. And like I said, there's my center spot. I'm gonna try to line it up as best as possible, but like I said, that light mount is molded, so it really does fit in one spot on this side. So as long as I can get it relatively close to that, I think everything's gonna land perfectly fine. All right, so I went ahead, prepped my tape a little bit here. So I moved it over just a smidge. You can see I taped it up underneath so it will lay flat, keep that wire flat. But basically what I did is I tried to line it up with the edge here. I thought the wire coming out way over here just looked a little gaudy. Not that this doesn't look gaudy, but I wanted to be as discreet as possible. So now what I'm going to do after I cleaned up everything is get this guy aligned, and then I'm going to peel off the backing of the double stick just a little bit in the middle, and that will allow us to line things up with the center there. And then we'll line up this side, pull that off, and then go over to the side. So basically the way you install this is from the middle out, so that way this doesn't bind. After I cleaned everything off, I'm gonna line up my centers. I'm gonna pull off the backing on just the middle sections of the tape. So basically you have one long piece going this way on the front, one long piece going that way on the back. Pull off the backing on maybe like an inch or so of it. That way you can get it lined up and pivot it just a tad so it gets right on our little mark there. And then we'll line up the side. And as we're holding down the side, pull off the backing and just push on it so everything adheres. I'm gonna wipe everything down one more time because I was doing a little bit more test fitting just to make sure everything's lined up. But that's exactly how you install it. Then the next thing we're gonna do is just wire everything. So I have that weather stripping back inside. I'm gonna heat it up a bit more, and that we're gonna use to install right here. But we have to cut it to length because we gotta basically throw the wire on it, install that, and then we could go to wire the rest of it, because we can't install that weather stripping after the fact because it's a solid tube. It's not like a split loom or whatever. All right, so everything is installed on the top of the truck. All the adhesives down. Everything's stuck very nicely. The easiest thing I did is I put the side where I wanted it to end up here, and I put a piece of tape, and I just lined it up, because since these things are molded, it kind of pushes everything into place. So if you have tape there, you measure to do the same thing on the other side, you have a very good indicator as to how far up this thing is going to go. And it's a little bit tapered, so you see a little bit more paint in the middle than you do on the side. But as long as you have a little bit more than a 1/16 of an inch, that's so you have enough flat surface for the adhesive to grab. So now what we're going to do is run our wire down this little channel here, and then this is where we're going to cut a piece of that rubber tubing that they give you in the kit, because we're going to install that right alongside the window here. Then the wire is going to pop down right through this little crevice. Once it pops in there, then we don't need to shield it that much anymore. It's just gonna basically ride around the fender and go right to my relay up front. Next thing we'll do, like I said, is go get that weather stripping piece, cut it so it fits right in this little opening, clean everything, adhere it, slide the wires down through it, and then we'll go in the engine bay and I'll show you how I wire up everything to my relay harness. All right, so now that we have everything situated there, I went ahead, tucked the wire in as best I can underneath the weather stripping. I used a little trim tool just to help get everything there. I went ahead and also cut my weather stripping to length. So like I said, it's gonna mount on this edge of the door trim. So what I did is I gave it a nice little tapered cut, which will go up at the top and give it a nice finished look right there. You won't even be able to see it. So the next thing I need to do is slide all that wire through this piece of tubing, clean up this little area, and then run the wire through this little corner right here. And then I can mount this guy, and then we are done with everything up here. We can go down below. I might take a permanent marker and just kind of color this red wire in so it's a little less discreet. Might even paint it white just so you really can't see it, or take a piece of white vinyl and just put it over there, or white heat shrink. Something, I don't know. Wasn't the best way. Might have been easier to do it this way, but that's still a lot of room. I don't know if you got a lot of play. Yeah, you might have a little bit of play. So if you're gonna do this again, maybe I would put the wire right through here. But I got it through the front side, whatever. It's not the end of the world. You barely see it. And there's ways we can make this a little bit more discreet. All right, lights mounted, wires run. Little weather stripping is installed. Like I said, one of my concerns was that these crimps here weren't going to come out. I'll let this thing get hit by the sun and see what happens with these. But if these don't go away, it might be worth trying to find a different solution here. Maybe even a thinner diameter. This was plenty once I get it cut this to length. But if I can find one that's not going to have these little crimps and these little jagged parts, it might be worth it. But for now, this will work. You can't see the wire at all until you get right up next to the light. This is all installed. We got our wire right here, and I'm basically just gonna trace my pod wire, which comes all the way around here, over the radiator, and then ties right into my relay. So I need to pull this shroud off, and then it is smooth sailing from here on out, just running the wires. So let's go ahead and get at it. All right, unfortunately, I ran into some issues with the footage that I filmed, kind of showing the wiring and everything, so I had to scrap that. So it's a new day, crappier weather, but still the same great footage you expect from Waterfowler 41, which is about as low-key as it gets. But anyway, let's talk through the wiring here real quick, because I'm imagining that's what a lot of folks are coming into this video to see. So again, I'm using a relay. I'm not tapping into my factory fuse box. I'm not tapping into my switch panel. I'm using a relay so that my Aerocab turns on automatically. So the wire routes. So you remember we have the wire coming down from the A-pillar here. Comes in right here. You can see that little red and black wire. It's zip tied to my pillar, my pod wires. Comes down through the fender. Pops out briefly right over here, just kind of rat's nest of wires. I'm going to clean this up this summer. But basically that wire is still traveling around here. Then I wrapped it in some mesh, I guess, wire protector, mesh loom. So this is the wire right here. It travels in front of my radiator, and then it drops into my relay. So the red wire here on the relay is the power wire for my Aerocab light. The black wire here that splits off from it that's tied into this bolt for now is the ground. So the ground, I'm just grabbing any random bolt. I could have grounded it on the relay, but I already had this here, had a nice terminal. And once the shroud is installed, this whole area is protected. So it's plugged into my relay. This relay is triggered off of this light right here. So I have this tied into terminal 13 on the passenger side harness, which is a white wire with an orange stripe. There's two of those same wires. I'm tapped into the thicker wire, which is in terminal 13 on the plug. So I know a lot of folks are always saying, hey, I found a white and orange wire. I tapped into it, didn't get enough voltage. That's because you're tapping into what I believed is this circuit, which has a lower amperage than this circuit. So it's not enough to turn the relay on. Make sure you're grabbing a thicker wire. And I'll drop the video for how I installed this harness as far as the wiring diagram in the description below. But anyway, this is tapped into this light. So when this light comes on, this turns on my relay, which controls my pods here. And then at one point in time, I had it controlling the pods in the back that I was using as chase lights. I removed those now that I'm running the Outlander topper. But anyway, so we have our power wire here. So when this relay turns on, it's going to send power directly to the Aerocab light. We have our ground here. So everything is connected and hunky-dory. Let's close this down. So let me show you here real quick. We go into the truck. And if I were to just turn on the marker light circuit, so that's just this little, looks like 2 fighting jellyfishes. So if I turn that guy on, you see our marker light's on. And if we look up top, oh, our Aerocabs are on. So these things are awesome. It works very well. Everything has a nice balanced amber look to it. When my truck's on, my mirror lights also turn on. But anyway, that's how I wired in my Aerocab to work on the relay. I don't have it tapped into the fuse box. I don't like doing that. I'd rather run its own dedicated power for everything. But that's how I installed this on my 2020 Ram Rebel. A couple of observations now that I've had this for a few days. First one is above 40 miles an hour, you do get some whistling from this guy. So it is tall enough that you're going to get some whistling. The way around that is turn your radio up a little bit. If your car is completely quiet, you're going to hear that whistling noise, and you might, if you're sensitive to noise, it's going to drive you nuts. But all I did is turn my radio up just a little bit, and that's all it took to drown out the noise that the Aerocab was making. The second thing is, even though this has been on for a few days, the kinks have still not completely left this weather stripping, and because it had such a rigid shape to it, it's having a hard time adhering to the actual pillar. So I'm going to get a hold of AVS and see if we can figure out another solution, or if they can send me a new piece here, which is going to be a pain in the butt to replace. But just because this thing it's got such a rigid shape to it, such a rigid piece of rubber, it's really struggling to adhere to the pillar because it was bent. And no matter how much heat I put on it, I was still having issues with it. The other thing that I know, and you can kind of see it here, you see a lot of the orange glare off the hood. These lights are really bright, and it's not going to shine a distracting amount of orange on your hood, but it does shine some light on your hood. So if you want a completely, like you can see it on my windshield wiper blades. But if you're looking for a completely dark hood, these things are really bright, and you either need to add a resistor on there to dim them down, or just not install them at all. But they are bright, which is awesome, because at night, they do what they need to do, right? They give you the clearance that you're looking for, and you're looking for marker lights. You want to be seen on the road. But other than that, I'm pretty happy with it. Like I said, I'm going to try to come up with a solution for the wire that's poking out right here. You do see it, but I think a white piece of vinyl over that is going to be enough to make it hidden. Let's close the door. That buzzing's getting irritating. But with that said, that is how I installed the Aerocab marker lights on my 2020 Ram Rebel. Thank you very much for watching. Appreciate it.